1. A terrible incident occurred in a motel near the road when a group of travelers stopped for the night. They noticed the strange behavior of the owner of the motel, who behaved very suspiciously with all the customers. It turned out that the owner was a serial killer, and there was a real hell hidden in the motel. Blood-drenched rooms and secret caves where he kept the remains of his victims. Travelers, unsuspecting, entered the motel and rented several rooms, but from the first minutes they felt the unpleasant presence of darkness and evil that seemed to permeate through the walls. The air around them became polluted with an eerie stench, causing nausea and misgivings. Gradually, while dining in an old abandoned restaurant, the travelers began to exchange stories and startling facts about the place. One of them found out that the owner of the motel used to perform extremely strange rituals in this hall, and the locals always avoided it, feeling some unknown threat. Feeling that their lives were at risk, the group decided to get to the bottom of the mystery of this motel in order to survive. However, the deeper they penetrated into the secret caves, the more they fell into a tangled web of evil and danger. Suddenly, they saw an abandoned church in one of the rooms, where bloody candles were still smoking. Suddenly, the sound of bell ringing swept through the motel, penetrating the hearts of the travelers. The writings on the walls and floor began to glow, revealing ancient prophecies and warnings of the bloody shadow that had slumbered inside the motel all these years. Within minutes, the world around the travelers turned upside down. The walls began to shake, and everyone present felt a searing pain inside them. They found themselves trapped in a world where their every move was controlled by evil. As they made their way out of the cave, they found themselves in the room of the mad owner. Now they were to fight for their lives in mortal combat with him. Blood and violence filled the air while the room became a battle arena. But the travelers did not give up. They used all their strength to resist this bloody shadow that was consuming everything around them. They found ways to fight the evil and used them to free themselves from the grim shackles by which they were bound. Eventually able to conquer their fears and free themselves from the cruel too. A couple traveling with their young daughter lived in a pleasure motel near the road. One night they heard noises coming from the next room and decided to check to see what was going on. To their horror, they saw the room appeared to be filled with decapitated dolls hanging from the ceiling, and the words, "You're next," carved into the wall with a knife. They immediately fled the motel and called the police, but the source of the threat was never found. For the safety of themselves and their daughter, the couple decided to leave the motel immediately and move far away from the place. They settled in another city, in a hotel with a good reputation, and continued their journey. However, the eerie events at the motel kept them busy. They spent nights worrying, trying to figure out who could have been responsible for what they had witnessed. The parents carefully tried to close all the windows and doors, spent nights on the clock, struggling to sleep soundly. The little daughter, not realizing what was happening, began to show signs of anxiety and fear. Time passed, and the family finally decided to seek professional help. They hired a private detective specializing in paranormal investigations. The detective set to work, conducting a thorough analysis of what had happened at the motel. However, despite his best efforts, several weeks passed without any new results. The family began to lose hope that they would ever learn the truth about what had happened. Anxiety and fear would not leave them, and they decided to move to another country, hoping that a change of scenery would help them forget the past. Years passed, and the family put everything related to the terrible incident behind them. They started a new life in another country, became successful and happy. However, the memory of the horrors they had to endure in that cursed motel never completely disappeared. Sometimes in carefree moments, my parents still remembered those decapitated dolls and the words carved on the wall with a knife. They never found out who the source of the threat was, and though the mystery remained unsolved, the family gradually learned to live without letting fear define their lives. Their young daughter grew up and became a strong woman. Together with her family, she overcame hardships and helped herself and her parents build a new future. The family bond became their support, helping them to survive all the trials and believe in a bright tomorrow. Or 3. A strange event happened in a dark and abandoned motel near the road. A woman decided to stay the night and occupy one of the rooms, but in the middle of the night she awoke to scary sounds and an uncontrollable panic state. She soon discovered that there were ghosts and souls of the dead crawling all over the room, carrying negative emotions. The woman fled the motel and never visited the area again. Many years have passed since then, but the story of the gloomy motel is still vivid in the woman's memory. She realized at that moment that she had come face to face with the darkness that came from the tragic story associated with the place. Not daring to stop outside the motel, she decided to research the history of the place. After much research, she discovered that the motel was once a place where terrible crimes took place. Its owner, an alcoholic and drug addict, was murdered in one of the motel rooms and his body was never found. The ghosts and souls she saw were the ones who were murdered and left alone with their own dark emotions. After their deaths, they were left in torture and suffering, trapped within the confines of this dingy motel. The woman decided she had to do something to free these souls from their suffering. She performed a cleansing and prayer ritual in an attempt to remove all negative emotions and fears from the place. She also created a memorial for the murdered motel owner so that he could find peace. After her activities, the motel became quiet and peaceful. The ghosts and souls of the dead no longer appeared, and the negative emotions dissolved more and more each day. The woman felt that she had helped these souls and accomplished something important. She now sought to share her experience with others and warn them of the dangers that can melt in dark and abandoned places. She has realized that unexpressed negative emotions and suffering can take over souls and lead them for years to come. The woman is no longer afraid of mystical and unexplained phenomena. Her encounter with ghosts in a dingy motel was a turning point in her life that helped her realize that every place can have a story and needs understanding and attention. In this way, the story of the mysterious motel became a stark warning to anyone who yearns to stay overnight in such places. Never underestimate the power of the past and how it can affect the present. Every place has its own history, and it is worth treating it with respect and attention. 4. In a secluded motel near the road, tragedy struck when one of the guests inexplicably lost his mind and committed suicide. Afterward, the entire motel was shrouded in an aura of death and evil. Anyone who stayed there felt haunted and witnessed strange apparitions of the suicidal man. To this day, many people have noted that at night, you can hear eerie screams and see ghosts of the past, leaving locals terrified. Strange and creepy events have been happening in that motel for several years in a row. Locals began to avoid the place as it was filled with an atmosphere of horror and despair. Embarrassed witnesses claimed that at night, the ghost of a suicidal man would roam the corridors of the motel, emitting eerie, piteous screams. Lone travelers who happened to be in the area could feel the eerie aura surrounding them. The air was saturated with negative emotions, and the motel wards felt the eyes of a sizzling ghost following them with every step. They often saw ghosts of the past of crying women and desperately screaming men who seemed to be cursed for all eternity. The local residents, knowing of the tragedy that had occurred at this motel, were no longer surprised by the ghosts and sounds. They secretly hoped that one day this place would be free of its sinister aura and regain its former favorable reputation. Some brave paranormal investigators tried to figure out what was really going on in this motel. They have conducted nightly sightings and set up special equipment to capture ghosts. However, so far no one has been able to explain what is happening and find peace of mind in this cursed place. Therefore, locals and visitors remain terrified by the ominous sounds and visions that continue to haunt them in the motel. Night screams penetrate their dreams, and ghostly shadows haunt them at every turn, filling their hearts with overwhelming fear and anxiety. The mysterious tragedy at the secluded motel has become a truly integral part of its history. It filled its walls with dark echoes of the past and became a reminder of human tragedy and the loss of hope. Until these ghosts and the aura of death leave the place, the residents will always see and hear their presence, and prosperity will return to the motel only after the mystery of the tragedy is solved. 5. There was a real-life network of rapists operating in a motel near the road. A group of young women staying at the motel overnight were trapped by sadists. They were raped and their bodies were stabbed to death. Police and rescue workers repeatedly searched for the whereabouts of this creepy organization, but were never able to find it. and the motel remained a sinister place, terrifying anyone who would hear about it. Except that one hot summer evening, fate decided to step in and turn everything upside down. A beautiful girl named Anna, traveling alone, decided to stay the night in this sinister motel. Unaware of its dark history, she had no idea of the danger she was walking into. As Anna entered the dingy room, she felt something unknown envelop her. An elusive fear pierced her heart, but she tried to suppress it, insinuating to herself that it was only a fantasy. But the demons of the past were stronger. They came alive within the walls of this hideous place. Gradually, the night grew colder and more silent. A special misgiving enveloped the air. Anna kept looking back through the thick curtains, expecting some ominous presence. She felt darkness enveloping her soul and realized that she had only one chance left: to survive. Suddenly, the doorbell rang. Anna's heart froze. She knew perfectly well that this was the beginning of a nightmare. The voice behind the door introduced himself as a policeman and warned her of the outbreak of violence in this motel. He said they were getting close and she should stay in the room until they arrived. Anna, overwhelmed with anxiety and relief, slowly began to hope that she would get out of this dangerous situation. She readied the weapon in her hand and prepared herself to fight back in the event of an attack. But in a few minutes her levity was shattered.